I want to welcome everybody to 301 AD's live Twitter space, where we're going to be discussing the normalization process that is ongoing with Turkey. 301 AD, as I think many of you know, is the largest Twitter account, Armenian Twitter account, and it has covered all sorts of political and military issues for some time. You probably were introduced to it during the Artsakh War in 2020. The team and the work has expanded considerably since then, and there's a lot of things on the docket. So make sure to follow 301 for news updates and also updates as it concerns what is happening with 301 and the 301 network. My name is William Bairamian. I am the founder and editor-in-chief of the Armenite, and I'm also a contributing editor here at 301, which is why I'll be hosting this talk on the normalization process with Turkey. And I am truly honored to introduce our guest and my friend Varuzhan Geghamyan, who is a PhD and an associate professor at Yerevan State University. He is one of the foremost young Turkologists, if not the foremost young Turkologist in Armenia. He's one of the most well-versed people on Turkey in Armenia today. And he just does wonderful work. I highly encourage you to follow him both on Twitter and on Facebook and on Telegram, and I'll let him tell you what those channels are later on before we sign off. He's also the co-founder, I have to mention, of the Armenian Project, which is this new project, which we can talk about toward the end of the talk, just doing some really wonderful work in educating the youth in Armenia. So with that, Varuzhan, welcome to this talk.
Thank you very much, William. The pleasure is mine, and thank you for having me.
It is likewise a pleasure, Varuzhan. So let's jump right into it. As we all know, ever since the capitulation agreement in 2020, in November of 2020, there have been discussions, some secretive, some public, about the possibility of a normalization with the Republic of Turkey, a normalization between the Republic of Armenia and the Republic of Turkey. And as we learned recently, that process has been formalized and is ongoing, and there have been meetings with the two parties, and I believe one of the meetings most recently just ended in Vienna between the two sides. So what can you tell us about the framework of this process? What is going on? What are they discussing?
Thank you for the question. Well, first of all, we should say what we know for sure. I mean, the facts. We know certainly that there is a process between the political elite of Armenia and Turkey on some. I mean, there is a process which has component of negotiations. So we definitely know this, but we started to know about this process when the process was already begun. We have heard some details about the ongoing negotiations, not from the Armenian side, but from the Turkish side. If I'm not mistaken, the first leakage of such kind of communication and then negotiation appeared in Turkish press in the end of summer, late summer. And then we had some other leakages done by the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who several times mentioned that there are attempts by the government of Armenia to contact with him, but without fulfilling the preconditions which Turkey posted against Armenia, no connection and no negotiation is possible. So he repeated this several times during his press conferences or his speeches in the parliament. So we know that at least until late fall, more precisely until September, officially Turkey was posting some specific preconditions to start the negotiations. And the Armenian side was saying that no preconditions are possible. We are starting direct talks on normalization of relations. So the rhetoric, official representation, and communication on this was absolutely different. Turkish side was saying that there are preconditions and naming and putting on the list these preconditions, and Armenian side was saying that there is no precondition. In this phase, the process was quite. Even in this process, in this part, the process was quite different from the one we had formerly in 2008, 2010, the so-called football diplomacy between Armenia and Turkey, when again there were direct talks, there were discussions, but both sides were saying that really there are no preconditions, though they appeared at some stage. But still, in the beginning, the Turkish side was also repeating the same messages as the Armenian government, that these are the talks to create, normal relations between Armenia and Turkey, which was, of creating some anger, not only in the region, but more specifically in Azerbaijan, which also brought to even some strong disagreements between leaders of two countries, and even it reached to the level of diplomatic. No, I would like not to say break, but it was not quite like a break. It was some tension. Okay. So
that is definitely something that I would like to talk about, because I think that was an important factor in the past. And I assume that it would be an important factor today too. But since you mentioned the preconditions, I think it's important that we touch upon that. What, if any, preconditions do we know about that Turkey has placed? If again, we know about them, or they've actually stated it publicly. Do we know what any of those are? Have they stated that publicly, or are we just guessing?
Okay, thank you. First, I need to say one more word about the process in general that we know for sure. In the end of last fall, we have heard from both sides. Again, by the way, first we got news from the Turkish side. Each time Armenian government failed to communicate that they are doing something with Turkey, or they have some process. We heard from the Turkish side, namely, the Minister of Foreign Affairs Mevlut Çavuşoğlu became the number one newsmaker in Armenia. And this is sad, but again, so in the end of the fall, we have heard that two countries decided to put some special envoys to start direct talks. Though the place where they were going to discuss and negotiate is not, in Armenia or Turkey, but third countries, and of course the first country should be Russia. So they decided, and yesterday the second meeting between those envoys took place. This time in Vienna again, though Turkish side repeatedly is trying to make Armenia to hold these meetings in either in Turkey or in Armenia rather than in third countries. So this is the official part we know, and only one thing to add is that each time these two counterparts, these envoys, they meet, they announce that they have gone further, and they are doing their best steps to, further to normalize Armenian and Turkish relations. But besides this, we have Turkish side's permanent rhetorics and permanent comments on the process, which brings us to the matter of preconditions and to the details, which we don't know from the Armenian side, unfortunately. So, Turkish side is repeatedly trying to say that there are preconditions for Armenia, and instead of first they started to put on the list, as I said, these preconditions, but now they are saying that everything is great if Armenia continues the attitude which it started in the process of normalization, then definitely we are going to finish this process with the opening of the borders and the establishing of diplomatic relations. So first, initially, again, there were preconditions on the list, but now the rhetoric of Turkey has been changed, and now it is saying that if Armenia continues its attitude, which could be, logical continuation of these preconditions and the fulfillment of these preconditions. And now, what are these preconditions? We have traditional three preconditions of the Turkish side, which it started to put on the table with the beginning of independent relations between Armenia and Turkey after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And these are let's name them, let's call them classical preconditions. The first one is the recognition of the territorial integrity of the countries of the region according to the Kars and Moscow agreements of 1921. This is important. I'm going to say also why this is important for Turkish side. The Kars and Moscow agreements are, first of all, are important for Turkey because it fixes the borders of the Soviet Armenia and Soviet Azerbaijan and Soviet Armenia and Turkey. So, if we never recognized this agreement, and if we recognize, then we give another opportunity for Azerbaijan and Turkey to claim that we are, with the Artsakh issue, we are risking the territorial integrity of two countries. So Kars and Moscow agreements and the recognition of the international borders. The second precondition is to leave for the Armenian troops to leave the territory of Artsakh, Republic of Artsakh, and to give the so-called 7 regions, which is now fulfilled. Absolutely, totally, because Armenia, after the capitulation, the government already gave lands surrounding the so-called Nagorno-Karabakh autonomous region, and actually no Armenian soldier is currently being served is serving in Nagorno-Karabakh. So the second one is fulfilled. And
you mean no soldier from the Republic of Armenia, right?
Yeah, the Republic of Armenia should be should be serving there. And the third one is the classical for the diaspora, especially. Armenia should stop the recognition, international recognition of Armenian genocide. And the whole this process should be abandoned. So these are the classical three, and they were always on the table, even during the first phase of negotiations between Armenia and Turkey during the football diplomacy. Though at that moment, Armenia's diplomacy was trying to somehow, take this out of the scope of negotiations. Though we didn't manage. We should say this. And besides these three, there are new preconditions coming, and the first and the most important one out of this new part of preconditions is, of course, the so-called Zangezur corridor, or the transportation corridor through the Sunnic region of Armenia, which should have special status. So, and you know that according to the capitulation agreement of November 2020, this also in somehow, not directly, but somehow is established. And not currently both Turkey and Azerbaijan are heavily, pressuring Armenia to give this the so-called corridor and to open it. So, there are other preconditions. For example, the pressure on Armenia to close the nuclear, how we call it, nuclear
The power
station.
plant. Yep.
Yeah, power plant. Yeah, in Metzamor, which is near the border of Turkey. And if we give this, then Armenia is definitely going to lose all its energy independence, which it has. First of all, thanks to this power plant, and there are some others. But for the moment, these main four, the classical three and the one with corridor, are the preconditions which in some way either already fulfilled by Armenian side or are in the process of fulfillment. And here I should say why, because if we look at what the government and especially the Prime Minister of Armenia says repeatedly during these last 3 months, then we can see, if not the facts, but at least the trends to fulfill these preconditions. For example, the recognition of the genocide. In his last press conference, Prime Minister said that the recognition of Armenian genocide was never the deal of the Armenian state, but rather it was the deal of the Armenian diaspora and diaspora organizations, Haidat and the others. So this is the first one, yeah. And I can say that also all Armenian institutions, starting with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs up to other representative bodies in the international organizations, they stopped putting Armenian genocide in their agenda and the recognition of Armenian genocide in their agenda. So this is, for 100%, and you can even check it by your own if you look at the announcement of the Armenian institutions at the level of representation of the Armenian genocide during different formats, international formats, and many other things. So this is the first one.
But to be clear, Varuzhan, so on the one hand, he's saying that this was something that was being carried on essentially by the Armenian diaspora, but by the same token, what they're doing is they're removing it from the agenda of the state institutions, which would presume that, of course,
exactly.
the state institutions were also participating in that effort. So he's being dishonest, which is, I think, not surprising in our experience. But I just wanted to clarify that it was not just a agenda.
Thank
Sorry
you.
To interrupt.
He's definitely no worries. He is definitely manipulating. Of course, Armenian genocide was one of the, fixed parts of Armenian diplomacy. And what is really important to say that Armenian genocide and the recognition of Armenian genocide was one of the few tools which we had on our hands in the talks with Turkey. It's not almighty tool, but still it was an important tool to make some pressure on Turkey, because Armenia, with the issue of genocide and with the diaspora which supports this, has absolutely other weight than Armenia without the diaspora and without the international pressure on Turkey on genocide. So, this is definitely one thing which Turkey tried to put on the agenda of Armenia from the beginning of, independent period of negotiations, from the early beginning of 90s. They were trying constantly to say that, the problem between us is not you, but rather diaspora Armenians who are taking revenge of us And I mean, if you, I mean, they don't think about you, they don't think about your economic prosperity, which should be there if we open borders and have negotiations. And I mean, you should not believe to diaspora. Should not support the diaspora, and you should say diaspora that they should, I mean, finish this process of recognition. So this was one of the propaganda theses and rhetorics of Turkish side on the state level and on the track 2 and track 1.5 levels always. And now we see that Armenia is, I mean, fulfilling this not only just by removing the diaspora, the recognition issue from its agenda, but also putting some, disconnections between Armenia and diaspora, which is absolutely terrible thing. And I mean, this is, I'm definitely not in the scope of the interests of Armenian nation. So the first, we discussed the first precondition. Other two are also being constantly challenged, let's say, by the Armenian government and particularly by the prime minister. He, again, during his one of the last conferences, he said that, I mean, we have always recognized the territorial integrity of Turkey and Azerbaijan, which is, again, not true. And he was, I mean, referring to in 1999 Istanbul Convention. And if you, I mean, have an opportunity to just Google it and open it, and there is no words about the territorial integrity and no words about the, absence of the right of minorities and right of the people to self-determining. So,
so why would he say that?
Because, I mean, we are going to the next precondition. The Armenia's current government is definitely started to, let's say, reject the political agenda of Artsakh. And now Artsakh is rather just a social and cultural issue rather than political. And Armenia probably is, because of this capitulation and continuation of this capitulation, is saying the words which are not going to be against Azerbaijan. I mean, this is what we see, at least, because you have never heard from after November 2020 by the Armenian high-ranking representatives about the possibility of independence of Artsakh, possibility of the unification of Artsakh and Armenia. But what we really heard and what we see in their announcements, in their declarations and their speeches, it is that Artsakh is a social issue. We should support the rights of Artsakh, but no words about independence, no words about not being in the territory of Azerbaijan, and many other, I mean, things connected to this. And I'm not even saying about about different MPs in the parliament from the ruling party, which are constantly repeating that, connect Armenia and Artsakh is not a good deal for Armenia. We should not think about that. We should not repeat the words that are being constantly repeated by some parts of the society, that without Artsakh there is no Armenia. So, I mean, they are trying to delete all the discourse around political discourse around Artsakh. And I can say, I mean, this is already my analysis, that this is, in a way, continuation of the capitulation. So this is the second one. And the third one, and I'm finishing with this.
Sure.
This is the Zangezur corridor issue. If we look at the November 2020 capitulation document, we see that there is a special article, the 9th article, the last one, which is about the Zangezur corridor, or about providing a connection between the so-called western regions of Azerbaijan, which is actually occupied territories of Artsakh, and Nakhichevan to Turkey, and which should be, the security of which should be provided by the third party, by the Russian officers. And also it is stating that Armenia should be the guarantor of the security of this road. So this is a kind of a mine, because in case that something happens, for example, around this road, this is a legitimate reason for the Turkish or Azerbaijani side to say, something happened on this road, and Armenia should be providing their security, which she didn't. And now we have a right to guarantee this security by our own. So actually, this happened in Syria in the beginning of the war, and then it happened in Iraq, and then this gave an opportunity for Turkish forces to be located in independent Syrian and Iraqi territories. So the Zangezur corridor is definitely on the table, and we see that Armenian government agreed to spend more than 200 million drams to rebuild the railroad in Syunik region, this 45 kilometers, which should connect Nakhichevan to the occupied territories of Artsakh, to Azerbaijan in this case. And when we ask whether there are any, research and analysis about the efficiency of this road, what it will give to Armenian side, whether it will bring any economic prosperity, there is absolutely no word, no counts, no numbers, and only just like mantra, we are hearing that everything will be great. So I can say that this is definitely one of the parts of this so-called Zangezur corridor, because according to the Turkish and Azerbaijani side, the Zangezur corridor should be a multimodal road connection with a railroad, with with highway, and with gas and electricity connections, so gas pipeline and electricity network. And we can say that Armenian government currently is paying for the Turkish corridor, which has no absolutely economic prosperity for Armenia. At least there is no analysis and no research on this. And by saying this, we can also fix that, in fact, Armenian government is fulfilling the preconditions. That's why Turkish side said that, if Armenia continues its attitude and continues the way it started with the negotiations, then we'll have, of course, good relations with them, and probably we'll open our borders for them. So this is the mantra and the logic behind these negotiations, as I can see it.
That was a wonderful insight into what is actually being discussed during the negotiations. Thank you for that, Varuzhan. So, from my perspective, right, and I think probably the perspective of many people, what we know is that Armenia signed a capitulation agreement in November of 2020, which ended the war. Right, it was a devastating war. Thousands of men died. Tens of thousands of people were essentially ethnically cleansed from their lands and were displaced. It was just a ruinous situation for Armenians across the land. But the agreement was signed, and it's now done. So that begs the question: when we hear all the different preconditions that you just discussed that are on the table during the negotiation, or are very likely on the table during the negotiation, because they always have been of interest to Turkey, why is it that the Armenian side is even willing to have that conversation, right? If all of these things do not benefit Armenia, or do not at least outwardly benefit Armenia, maybe there's something that I'm not seeing or we're not seeing. What is the point of agreeing to these preconditions, or at the very least discussing how they're going to be implemented, if the corridor is something that we're not really going to benefit much from, but which is going to connect Turkey all the way to, it's going to connect essentially Istanbul to Baku ultimately, which will allow them to move goods and of course military wares if it becomes necessary on that road. If we're going to give up genocide recognition, which is, as you said, besides of course being a question of justice, historical justice, also an important piece of diplomatic leverage and political leverage that we've had as a state over Turkey. The recognition of the borders, which again does not necessarily benefit Armenia because we are in a position that recognizing those borders will create all sorts of issues for Armenians who are living in Artsakh, in the Republic of Artsakh. All of these problems that arise from having this discussion with Turkey and doing it from a position of weakness and still being willing to do it. What is, in your opinion, the motivation of this government to even have this conversation? Why would they do this if there's
Thank
no
you.
benefit to Armenia?
Yeah, thank you. This is a huge question, actually. Just one word for the corridor, because as my colleagues know, I called myself after this capitulation the specialist on corridors, because I always speak about this, and I'm trying to put this on the agenda, at least of civil society. This corridor issue is a big one, and it has many things to do with the more geopolitics. It's not, totally an Armenian-Turkish conflict issue or Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict issue, but rather a huge geopolitical project implemented, first of all, by Turkey, and it should be discussed separately. So, if you have, other questions, our listeners have other questions on this, I am ready to go into more details. And I should say that we finally prepared a report, in English and in Armenian and Russian, 20-something pages about only these corridors. So I hope this would be available also through your network to our readers. So why? The main question of your you said is why this government, behave like this. Why they believe that this is a good step for Armenia, or maybe at least they argument that this is a good step for Armenia. I have, four main reasons. There are, and according to these reasons, we can categorize also members of this government. Okay, the first one, and I firmly believe in this because I know personally some of these government members, because they are my classmates or we have studied together. Unfortunately, this is the first of all, this is the lack of knowledge. Ignorance and lack of knowledge of the situation and incompetence to analyze the situation around Armenia, the real issues, the real priorities, and the threats also. If you don't know all of this, then you can't control and somehow predict the risks. Okay, so this is the first one. I know that many of Armenians would not, believe in this, but definitely there is a lack of knowledge, which is absolutely terrible thing. If you know that you have a lack of knowledge and you still keep the responsibility in your hands and you make decisions. This never happened. In the history of Armenia, independent Armenia, but now we see this all around. Yeah. And this is not about, the age of the people who are currently members of government. No, this is definitely, lack of understanding what it is about. Yeah. So the second, this was the first reason. The second reason is is more philosophical. It is the worldview of some of the members of this government, and according to this worldview, which is highly connected to the popular liberal understanding of the world and world politics, that if there are democracies and no borders, then we'll have no conflicts, no wars, and there will be an end of the history and everybody will live in a prosperity, quite like the a very known professor from America, Francis Fukuyama, which in these days is trying to to again put some his renowned understanding of the world into Ukrainian politics. I mean, check his
Yes.
tweets; they are wonderful, really. So this is the let's say the tradition of 90s, when people was believing that we can create, I mean, world without borders, without wars, and there are no history is not important, traditions are not important. We can live just by our own, huh? As we have in Armenian a word like lërveng. Hangis lërveng. Sorry for this.
No, it's okay.
For this word, but still, I mean, this is how they see, and this
The
worldview.
liberal democratic model.
Well, it has nothing to do actually with real democracy and real liberalism, but still, I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, we can somehow coin the word liberal democratic view to this worldview of some of the members of this government,
Right.
and they are mainly those who supported also Levon Ter-Petrosyan, because many of these ideas were first brought into larger discourse, public discourse in Armenia by Levon Ter-Petrosyan, and still he continues this, by the way. This brings some special understanding of the issues. For example, for the prime minister, who while being just a journalist, he several times wrote, for example, about this corridor, because the corridor issue was on the agenda of Turkey starting from the beginning of 20th century. And then when the Soviet Union collapsed, Turkey again tried to put this into agenda. And you know that there were even some negotiations in frames of the Nagorno-Karabakh discussions in the end of 90s, again to somehow change territories or something, but Armenia never agreed to this, by the way. So the prime minister several times wrote in his column, in his op-eds, that corridor is not a big deal. It's a good chance for Armenia to get some additional money because of this transfer. And how he argumented this in one of his very renowned open editorial from 2001. In May, he published this, and I have the copy of this, by the way. He said that there he argumented this, that, our territory is being currently, he said, occupied by Russians. We have many Americans. We have Iranians. Why we shouldn't give Turks a possibility to be in our territory as well? So we can give the corridor. It will bring some additional money, and hopefully this will help to our economy. And we see no problem in providing connection to Turkey, for Turkey to Azerbaijan and then to Central Asia. I mean, so we here see that there is purely, even not economic, how we say, I mean, like very basic understanding of the issues, and no understanding of geopolitical importance and the risks which all Armenia, Syunik, and Artsakh will have out of this.
So self-interested motivations.
Very basic, elementary understanding of the issues. And this is the second category of people there in the government. And I can firmly believe that still they think that now we have a great opportunity to live in a peace and without any, serious efforts, because we now have no Artsakh. There is no need to keep like a huge army. There is no need to keep strong institutions. We just can live. I mean, just like chill out. Yeah, as they understand.
And I think, since sorry, because you mentioned Levon Ter-Petrosyan, I think it would be important here to note that many of the people that you just mentioned or you're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they are part of a group of people in Armenia who, for 20, 25 years at this point, if not 30 years, have believed that Artsakh is a burden for the Republic of Armenia and the Armenian people, and that without Artsakh, Armenia would flourish and the Armenian economy would skyrocket and things would be better almost instantaneously. And this is something that people believed during Levante Bedrosian's time, and which many of the people who now work for the current government also believe. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
Would you say?
yeah. Exactly. For them, Artsakh issue and all these national issues were always in some way artificial, as they, by the way, they directly said this like for hundreds of times, and now they see that peacekeepers are there. No worries. We can live with our own, and we already see that these are being openly articulated by some of the members of the government, saying that please don't talk about Artsakh. We live in Armenia. There is Artsakh, there are Russian peacekeepers, and it is a territory of Azerbaijan. So they should decide by their own what is going to be with this, the fate of this territory. So this is, I mean, this is a direct citation by one of the ruling members of the ruling party in parliament. So the third category, so we got first two, like those who are ignorant and they have lack of knowledge. The second one, those who believe in this end of the history, and by this worldview, they also approach to Armenian issues. The third category is unfortunately are those who I can openly say that these are mainly the lobbyists of Turkish and Azerbaijani interest in Armenia. I don't want to use the word spy, but I really mean it. These are the people who have high connections with the Turkish side. They are always in contact, and they openly say, I mean, during their discussions, during their talks, that we should be small brothers of Turkey. And I mean, for a person who really knows the history, who knows Turkish attitude and Azerbaijani attitude and atrocities against Armenians, even from the last war. I'm not taking even the genocide or other things. For me, this is lobbying of Turkish interests and fully anti-Armenian thing, which is quite like a spy of Turkey or Azerbaijan. I'm not gonna name them, but I mean, if you are in some way interested into local politics, then you can easily find out whom I mentioned. And the fourth category are those who always support the government, no matter who is in the government. These are huge. I mean, oligarchs. Those who who believe in possibility to earn a lot of money out of the opening of the borders, middle-aged merchants who are currently being named oligarchs, and of course they support with their money and resources these discourses, anti-Armenian, anti-Artsakh discourses, and pro-Turkish discourses in Armenia currently. These are the four main categories which I somehow separate. And I think this is all this together is actually the main motto behind this anti-Armenian attitude of the government.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Varuzhan. So we talked about sort of the overarching issues. The framework of the negotiations, what are being discussed, why the government is actually going ahead with this, despite the apparent lack of benefit to Armenia. And you went into a little bit of the history behind that. I think I think it might be relevant to also discuss the sort of the personalities involved, because ultimately the negotiations are taking place between countries, of course, but all the countries are appointing individuals. And there was a lot of discussion when we learned about the negotiations, as you said, from Turkey initially, about who was actually having that discussion for Armenia and then for Turkey. So, can you tell us a little bit about the negotiators themselves? I don't know how familiar you are with this, as far as their biographies, but can you tell us a little bit about the negotiators themselves, their backgrounds, and how you think, or what you think they're bringing to the negotiating table when they sit around and have that conversation, and why you think that each government chose that person?
Okay, thank you for the question. First, we need to put some framework details about these negotiations, then to understand who are those involved in this. Um, uh, uh, the Armenian side represents is being represented by Ruben Rubinian. Ruben Rubinian is a 31 years old guy whose only whose only point in his CV, in his bio, is being part of the so-called Velvet Revolution in 2018. I mean, he has no previous experience of work. He's, by the way, the son of Karapet Rubinian, who was one of the severe supporters of Levon Ter-Petrosyan and his ideas about Artsakh. By the way, I mean, I'm not saying that he's guilty for the views of his father, but still, I mean, this is kind of a tradition and environment where he was educated. Okay, and Ruben Rubinian is, as I said, I mean, has no previous experience of work, has no previous education of negotiations. Though he was graduated from his bachelor is from the International Relations Department of Yerevan State University, but still, I mean, he has one of the not the best students there, and of course, in bachelor, it's not impossible to take the skills of professional negotiator, especially when you have a person in front of you, Serdar Kılıç, who represents Turkey and who is a professional diplomat of around 40 years, who worked as the secretary of the Security Council of Turkey, which is the main body responsible for foreign affairs, who is one of the most professional persons around Erdogan still in, I mean, acting, and the one who served also in the US, which in Turkish culture is being believed to be the most difficult position for any diplomat, because it is the most difficult relations for Turkey. And Serdar Kılıç is definitely the one who is very anti-Armenian. While being the ambassador of Turkey to the US, he was not only just, I mean, traditionally repeating to Armenian actions and initiatives, but also he himself initiated many anti-Armenian things which were not connected to Armenian genocide at all. I mean, he was the supporter of the Azerbaijani claims over Nagorno-Karabakh. He was the supporter of pulling out pro-Armenian laws in the Congress and many other things. And I should say this, he was a very professional person. And he is the one who also openly says about the Armenian genocide by saying that this is absolutely, rejecting Armenian genocide and saying that Armenians are a threat to Turkey. So Ruben Rubinian and Serdar Kılıç. These are the bios, and I should say that after 2018, even in this for like 4 years, Ruben didn't get any strong experience, because he was appointed as deputy foreign minister, and then there was a riot in the ministry. Then because professional diplomats were saying, who is this guy? Why he should be foreign minister? And then he was pulled out and taken to the parliament, where he was the one responsible for parliamentary diplomacy, which actually we failed, or they failed. And now he's the one who is responsible for the negotiations. So, but about the framework, okay? So these are the bios, but the framework is much more important. I strongly believe that the meetings between these envoys are not about really negotiations. They don't really sit and discuss details. And here you need skills of negotiator. You need 100 hours of preparatory work or something like that. But rather, these are the meetings which are the possibility to exchange direct messages between Armenian leader, Prime Minister Pashinyan, and the Turkish side. I mean, Ruben Ribunian is not. I assume that he's not discussing details of, I mean, pointed agenda, but rather just giving an address by his leader Pashinyan. And why I think this? Because we two main points. First, we see that there are no consultations in the Armenian side about the content of the agenda. Only a couple of people know what is being directly discussed between Pashinyan and Turkey. Second, always these meetings are happening after after we already have a leakage that this issue was already agreed between Armenia and Turkey. So the meetings are post factum fixing what already was being discussed. And I strongly believe that in case if there is a really, I mean, classical negotiation about the details or other things, then definitely there are still some loyal diplomats to Pashinyan who could be somehow engaged in this work. But choosing Rubinian means that you need only a person who directly says what Pashinyan told him to say, and directly pass the message from the Turkish side to Pashinyan. Not being a diplomat, not being a part of the professional team, and so on.
So he's
And
not really negotiating anything.
no,
he's
no, no.
just
I mean,
conveying
this is more
messages.
technical. This is more technical. And
Okay.
also, one thing which we forgot to mention during our first question, it is the fact that actually, if there is there is an issue of normalization of relations between Armenia and Turkey, the only point in agenda, as it was in during even football diplomacy, is the establishment of relations, diplomatic relations, and maybe opening of the borders. I mean, which are being closed by Turkey. And I mean, it's a simple diplomatic procedure when you just say, you know, like, just open the borders and send us a diplomatic note that you are establishing establishing diplomatic relations between our countries. No, I mean, there is no other agenda if there is a talk about just normalization. But rather, probably we are talking about the fulfillment of the preconditions, and this should be somehow fixed in any form. And already Armenian opposition said that they have an information about preparation of a document between two sides, which should mention also these preconditions. This is why I don't really put a lot of attention to this, to the meetings of these envoys. They are rather, I mean, artificial, and they are rather trying to somehow just fix what already has been discussed between the two sides in the backyard.
Hey, that's perfectly understandable. That was my read of the situation there as well, given the experience of the two sides who are negotiating. Although I do have one addendum, because you said his only the only item on his CV is being part of the Velvet Revolution, the so-called Velvet Revolution. But I will say that he was also apparently a fellow at the Istanbul Policy Center at Sabancı University in Turkey. I'm talking about Ruben Rubinian, which was part of the so-called framework for the Armenia-Turkey normalization process.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. The track two stuff that they were doing, that many different organizations were a part of, and also many individuals, some of whom are a part of this government, participated in. So he does. I mean, I think that's a relevant part of his background to know when we're discussing, his role in this negotiation process. But anyway,
Yeah.
I do want to get back to I want to talk about the future in a second, but before we get to that, I do want to talk about the past. I think some people are going to uh, say essentially, what's the big deal, Varuzhan? The Armenians and Armenia, during Sarkisyan's administration, also had a negotiation process that was ongoing with Turkey. As I mean, you already alluded to it. You made mention of it. The football diplomacy. There were a lot of discussions. The protocols were a huge announcement that for many people were unexpected. But in any case, the point is that there was a process that was ongoing to normalize relations between the Republic of Armenia and the Republic of Turkey in the past. It was done. What is the big deal with doing it now? What's the difference? Why should we care? Isn't this something that is going to happen eventually? So can you respond to that criticism?
Sure. Well, I should first of all mention that myself, I always, was the person who was putting, during my interviews or my state work, even trying to put Armenian-Turkish relations into agenda. I also I'm not believed, but rather I was also arguing that there should be talks with Turkish side, even not diplomatic relations, but constant talks, because this is a classical thing in diplomacy that being an enemies doesn't mean that you shouldn't have some connections, because these connections give you a possibility to somehow feel what is being prepared by your enemy. Though I strongly believe that Turkey is a geopolitical and political enemy of the Armenian state. This is the most important for me. I'm not talking even about the level of nations, about the level of mutual understanding and mutual images of two sides. Okay, but I was talking about political level, about the state level, and for me, as being a person who is studying and researching Turkish foreign policy already for more than a decade, I can say that it is very obvious for me that Turkish regional interests are contradicting to Armenia's regional interests, and moreover, the regional, let's say, expectations of Turkey, not and calculations of Turkey, they don't include an independent and sovereign Armenian state in them. So, if you are taking how Turkey sees the future of South Caucasus, how Turkey sees its role as a great player and great actor in the greater Middle East, which Armenia is a part of, you see that they don't, include Armenia as a sovereign, independent state with its own army, with its own political agenda, and many other things. And of course, here also comes the more wider geopolitical environment where Turkey is part of the alliance, which don't really care about Armenia at all. But rather, Armenia can be part of the alliances which are somehow stopping the Turkish approaches to the region and its attempt to conquer the region, both economically, politically, and why not militarily, as we see in Libya, in Syria, in Iraq, and in Artsakh. So, two main preconditions from my side. Yeah, I'm saying that I'm okay with the negotiations, constant negotiations, by the way, but not on the stake of Armenian interests. So what we had before was actually in some way represents my own attitude. We had always constant negotiations, even during the war, the first war in 1990s, but never it was putting all our interests aside, as we see right now. I mean, even in 1990s, even during the period of Levon Ter-Petrosyan, whom we already criticized, Armenian genocide was part of the negotiations. The Artsakh issue was always political issue, and if Turkish side was saying or repeating about Artsakh, then Armenians just were leaving the negotiations room. And this is, I mean, literally what I've heard by those who were participating in these negotiations. So we were also what we should mention that during all these years, Armenia was the winning side in Artsakh war, which Turkey was part of actually. And this Artsakh conflict, and being a winning side gives you a lot of priorities and gives
You
you.
mean sorry? You mean the first war, right? Just to
Yeah,
clarify,
definitely. I mean,
that
the
Turkey was
first one
also
and
a participant in the first war.
yeah, it was
Okay.
participating, and it was
Yes.
the ideological supporter of this war.
Yeah.
In the beginning of 90s, so we were
Okay.
the winning side, and we were our positions which were much stronger, and this, I mean, gave us a lot of possibilities to have equal talks with Turks, and it was never with any preconditions by the Armenian side. I mean, we were saying that there are no preconditions and we are ready to talk if there are no preconditions by the Turkish side as well. And this happened even during the football diplomacy when these protocols were signed in October 2010, if I'm not mistaken, in Switzerland. Even at the last moment, the Turkish side tried to put some preconditions, not in the protocols, but rather in the announcements by two sides, which should be done after the process of. I mean, when they were signing the document, and at the last moment, Armenian side said, no, we're not going to sign this document. Though already 2 years they were discussing, negotiating with details and many other things. And at the last moment, by the way, Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, according to the memories of Edward Nalbandian, the foreign minister of Armenia at that moment, Lavrov messaged him saying that just sign without any announcement. So, I mean, the Armenian side said, okay, we're ready to sign, but both of us were not going to make any announcement. And if you remember the footage and video materials from this event, you will see that there are just, I mean, standing, signing, and that's it. I mean, no words, no discussions.
Right. There
no,
was no press conference or anything. I
no,
remember that.
absolutely nothing. And this is because at the last moment, Turks were trying to put some preconditions. And Armenia never, I mean, agreed to this. Never. Though, as I said, many efforts were being made to reach to that point. So, and what is much more important out of all this, it is the fact that Armenian-Turkish reconciliation and normalization of ties never happened until today. It didn't happen not because Armenia's government were not. I mean, they didn't want to have relations with Turkey, but rather because there were preconditions by the Turkish side at the different levels, which Armenian side never accepted, and that's why the football diplomacy and these protocols didn't weren't ratified. This is why we had no talks in the 90s and no advantage in the talks in 1990s, because at every level Turks were trying to put the preconditions which we already discussed. But now it is happening. And happening with these preconditions. I mean, they are not even eliminated, but rather the amount of them of these preconditions rise. So this is why I think that it is not correct to start negotiation with Turkey in this period and with these starting positions, and also, and this is the last thing. I don't think that after the capitulation, after losing 75% of Artsakh, after the partly occupation of Syunik, Armenian-Turkish relations are number one priority for Armenian government if, as it said, it is just because we need open borders and we should have normal relations. I mean, we have much more important priorities for us. And instead of doing this, fulfilling these priorities, instead of dealing with these priorities, all our efforts, all our diplomacy, all our state discourse currently is being constructed around the relations with Turkey. And here I should, given a question, though I know the answer, if the Armenian-Turkish relations is first of all about economy, and having the Turkish huge market, more than 80 million thing, and the road to Europe and many other things, I should say, guys, you have Iran near you, whose interests, at least at this moment, are the same with the Armenian one. You have more than 80 million people living there, so you have the same market there. But comparing to the Turkish one, it is much more friendly to you than the Turkish one. You have Iran, and through the Iran's territory, you have direct connection to the Gulf, and the Gulf means you are directly reaching the most important trade roads and trade centers of the world, which is Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and other things. So, if it's only about economy, why you are not putting efforts currently after the capitulation to make Armenian-Iranian relations on the level of strategic alliance and work on the project and infrastructure which helps Armenia to reach these regions, to reach these trade roads and to these centers through the territory of Iran. And Iran is actually many times said that we are ready. We are ready to support you. We would be happy if you, finally build this north-south corridor. We are happy if you take our support to secure the territory of Syunik and many other things. So I don't think that the Armenian-Turkish relations should be number one priority currently, because we have much more important priorities. I'm not even talking about the constant animosity, the threats from the Turkish side towards Armenia and Armenians.
Okay, so you don't think that the normalization with Turkey should be a priority right now, even though you're not opposed to negotiations, of course, and I think that any reasonable person understands that. The only thing is that, and I just want to try to summarize it again, please jump in if you want to make any adjustments, but my understanding is that what we were doing when we were having these negotiations when Sarkisyan was president was we were negotiating from a position of power, whereas now we're negotiating from a position of weakness, and that is essentially the reason for why we're accepting all of these preconditions that are not of any benefit to Armenia. Of course, there's all the other sort of issues, the biographical issues and the historical issues there with the people who are in this government. But would you say that that's an accurate characterization?
Yes. Okay.
Varuzhan, I want to ask you one more question, and then we can open up the forum to a few questions from the audience, and then we can start wrapping it up. We've been talking for almost an hour, I think a little over an hour at this point. So my last question is about what comes next, right? It seems as though the current government is intent on normalizing relations with Turkey. It's been a dream of sort of the godfather, as you discussed, of this school of thought, Levon Tervedrosyan, with whom, Nikol Pashinyan was very close for very many years. He was the one who gave him his start in the political world. So this has been a goal for, many years from the very beginning of a part of the Armenian elite in the country. And it seems as though now that they find themselves in a position to finally realize this objective, they're going to do it. Okay, whatever happens, they want to make sure that relations are normalized, the borders are opened, there is freedom of movement, freedom of trade, and all the things that they think are going to make Armenia a better place. So say that this actually happens, right? Which it seems like it's going to at some point. We don't know when, but at some point it looks like it's going to happen. What do you think the consequences are going to be? What do you think I don't necessarily mean the negative consequences, but what's going to happen afterwards? What's going to happen in Armenia? What's going to happen in Turkey? What's going to happen in Azerbaijan? What's going to happen in the region when this finally happens? When the borders finally open?
To comprehensively answer to your question, we need a couple of other talks and discussions.
Well, we can do that too. But
yeah,
if you can give us a little preview of that.
Okay, I should first of all say about Armenian-Turkish relations, as it is our main topic. The process is ongoing, and definitely there is. I mean, we see that Turkey tries to accelerate the process, definitely, and we have seen in the Turkish press, pro-government press, leakages about approximate timetable of their understanding of how the process should go, and according to this timetable, until May they should finalize everything. I mean, they should sign something and establish diplomatic relations with Armenia. I see that this acceleration and the attempt of Turkey to somehow finish this as soon as possible, a good sign for us, because probably they also understand that Armenian-Turkish relations are heavily based not on direct relations between two sides, but rather on the geopolitical environment around Armenia and Turkey and in the region in general. So probably they also understand that if not now, then they will not have a chance to put these preconditions in front of Armenia and get fulfilled them by Armenian side. So that's why I see that they are trying to accelerate the process. And also, there is a strong attempt by Turkish side, and unfortunately being supported by by Armenia, to make the process really bilateral, without any third-party negotiators and mediators between them, like Russia or like the meeting in Austria. And that's why Turkey is constantly repeating its wish to have meetings be held in Ankara or in Yerevan. And as I said, unfortunately, Armenia agrees to this, because in case of bilateral relations, then Armenia has absolutely no possibility to counter the Turkish pressure and counter the Turkish attack. Probably current Armenian government see this as an opportunity to somehow be out of the Russia's influence zone, or to make their own deals. But of course, this is not true, and this is not correct in the current period, I think, because we are too weak to discuss directly with Turkey, which is, by the way, not alone. It is with Azerbaijan, and both sides constantly repeating that they are consulting each other. They are always in contact on the Armenian issue. And even 2 days ago, Erdogan directly said that, I called my friend, my brother Aliyev, and I said that we are doing this and this in Armenian Turkish relations. He said, I am agree, and if he is agreed, then we'll continue. So, Armenia is alone, and Turkey is not alone. And instead of bringing some allies on into our table, Armenia is saying, yeah, we are okay to discuss this in bilateral. So the main thing is that it is highly dependent on the geopolitical environment, and with the current crisis in Ukraine, probably will it is going to be too difficult to make some predictions what we'll have in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But if there is a constant polarization between the so-called collective West and Russia / China / Iran, then Armenia, as an ally and the country which is highly dependent on Russia, should take one side, and probably the process of Armenian-Turkish negotiations could be stopped because of this. But also, many things are connected to the internal issues in Armenia. I'm not even talking about the opposition forces which are able to somehow challenge this process, but also about the general understanding of the issue by the Armenian society. And as the recent polls showed, vast majority of Armenians living in Armenia are against the Armenian-Turkish relations, without Artsakh issue and genocide issue being part of Armenia's foreign policy agenda. And this is very important thing. It means that government which tries to create a discourse of peace and the age of peace and the discourse of requirement for peace, this discourse is still not efficient and not publicly supported. But rather, the majority see Turkey as a threat, as a political, economic, and security threat to Armenia. And this is important because government needs to, if it goes further into these negotiations and fulfillment of the preconditions, then it is going to have a lot of problems inside the society, and having, already some problems. It could be cost of power and cost of many other things. So this environment is also important, though currently there are massive efforts by the government to, somehow pressure this understanding of Turkish threats in Armenian society and change them with the economic perspectives of the Armenian-Turkish reconciliation. So these three components, geopolitical, Turkish attempts, and the internal Armenian issues, are the factors which can affect Armenian-Turkish negotiations further. And it's really difficult to say how which one of this would be much stronger in the upcoming weeks, and how all this will work together and what will be the result. One more thing about the general situation in all the region. We see that Turkish attempts to become number one country in the region, in the greater Middle East, are being constantly challenged by other players and local actors in the region. Be it Saudi Arabia, Egypt, even Emirates, Iran, and many others. And of course, they see problems with the reconciliation between Armenia and Turkey, which in their eyes is not a reconciliation, but rather another creation of another Turkish influence zone in the region. And this is true, actually. I mean, Turkey is not willing to have a peace agenda with Armenia, but rather it sees in this so-called peace process a possibility to economically and politically make Armenia dependent on it. So this also means that there are actors which should try, at least on some level, to stop this process. And if it is going to be answered by the Armenian side, then Armenia has much more stronger position, even if it decides to continue talks with Turkey. So, with this, I would like to say that there are also possibilities to counter this Turkish invasion, political at the moment. And in case of correct work and very detailed work, that then Armenia could have new allies and work with these allies to counter both economically, politically, and militarily Turkish threats. This is what I try to somehow summarize.
Well, I appreciate the hopeful note that you ended on. As they say, from your lips to God's ears. Hopefully Armenia will find the willpower and the resolve to do the right thing and engage some of those allies that you mentioned or alluded to in the negotiation process before it's too late. Now, Varuzhan, I want to thank you for this part of the discussion. If you don't mind, I would like to open it up to a few questions from the audience so we can hear a little bit from them. I can start off very quickly. There was a question that somebody sent to me on Twitter, Greg. He was asking, can you shed any light on how real estate purchases work in Armenia and how that might be affected, if and when, relations are normalized with Turkey? I think this is a concern that many people have, that, Turks are going to come into Armenia and, when the borders are open and there's free trade, they're going to buy up all the land. They're going to have a lot more capital available to them. There's a lot of people have been talking about the Batumization of Armenia or of Yerevan, or so. Can you speak a little bit about that? Do you have any idea about how that works and how that would work if the relations are normalized with Turkey and they're able to bring their capital to Armenia? And while you're doing that, if anybody else has any questions, or if anybody has a question, please, I think there's a way of raising your hand. Please do that, and then I will try to call on you in order, and we'll try to get as many questions as we can. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Sure, these concerns are, they are right, and they should be taken into note, because those who are familiar with the Turkish foreign policy in the region, they are also familiar with the ways Turkish, let's call it soft power, Turkish soft power works in the region. You mentioned Batumi, where the southwestern part of Georgia, which is widely, according even to founding documents of Turkish state, should be part of Turkey, and is widely accepted and considered in the political understanding of Turkish elite as a part of Turkey, which is currently not part of it, but we should be someday connected to Turkey as the Hatay region, former Alexandrette province of Syria, as the northern part of Syria currently, and the northern part of Iraq, and the northern part of Cyprus, and so on. So many of us in Armenia, we are familiar with the situation in Batumi, which is currently like kind of a Turkish territory inside of Georgia, because it is economically fully dependent on Turkey. Much of the real estate, all the infrastructure is being built by Turks and operated by Turks. And even in Batumi, we have already ghetto regions, ghetto parts of the city of Batumi, where you can't even like post something in Georgian. I mean, you should write it in Turkish. So this Batumization, as you called it, also happens in other places, like in Balkan countries. I mean, in the part of Europe. Look at the infrastructure purchases by Turkish companies in Macedonia, in Bosnia, in Albania and many other countries, which means that they are trying to create really kind of a huge influence zone where it is possible to create it through the economic means, where it is possible through political means. And at the last stage, when it's impossible to do this by this way, like they tried in Syria before the so-called Arab Spring, to make it through the military force, I mean hard power, like they did it in Syria and Iraq or in Libya. So this is a very real thing. And actually, my prediction is that they are going to do the same with Armenia, and having the relative smallness of Armenia and relative weakness of Armenia, I assume that the main tool for their work is going to be the mentioned soft power. So the most important one out of this, of course, is going to be economy. And for the Turkish economy, Armenia has no interest. I mean, Armenian market is too small. Armenian market is highly connected to Russia, and no, I mean, reason to really be here, rather than just to take Armenia economically, to occupy Armenia economically. And of course, again, because of this smallness, even state can allocate some funds to the companies which are going to operate in Armenia, just to make, Armenian national economy, our own money, to be eliminated. And of course, the real estate purchases is one of the part of this. They are going to definitely open a lot of agricultural companies here, putting at the first stage money to make the citizens of Armenia to believe that this is not a bad thing. And then when they retake the Armenian market, then, there is no words about independent Armenian economy. And then, of course, if you have no independent economy, then you have no independent policy and politics, no army, no national education. And I can continue all the state institutions and state and national institutions. So this is, of course, a thing we should consider. We should talk about constantly and raise awareness of the citizens. But in case it happens, I'm really I'm not sure that we can somehow stop it, because it will be very quick, very massive, and with the government support to this Turkish economic occupation, definitely will not be able to stop it.
Thank you, Varuzhan. That was very helpful in understanding one of the potential consequences of the open borders. We have somebody who raised their hand. It looks like their name is Ara, so I'm going to. Here we go. I'm not sure how to.
Yeah. So thank you both for the talk. It was very insightful.
Okay, so you can speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Hear me? Thank you, Ara.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was just wondering. We're obviously dealing with a great deal of incompetence, but what can we, as Armenians, from the diaspora and from Armenia proper, do moving forward? That's pretty much my question. Nothing more than that.
Thank you, Ara. And Varuzhan, just so everyone knows, I'm gonna after you ask your questions, I'll move you back down into the audience so I can bring somebody else back up. Okay, so thank you, Ara.
Yeah, thank you. Can I answer right now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ara, for the question. This is really very important. We should really understand that this is not a fully hopeless situation. I mean, desperate situation. There are certainly ways to stop the processes, to somehow influence the processes, though day by day, gradually, the tools to influence the situation and to somehow support the pro-Armenian agenda, these tools are being gradually more weak. I mean, they are weakening and being gradually eliminated. I would bring one example. The first and foremost thing is, of course, to raise awareness. And here, where we really need massive work. And first of all, this rising of awareness should be done not in the international community, as we used to do during all these 30 or 50 years, because we were always, tweeting, writing articles, lobbying in our communities that this country should help Armenia or to stop Turkey and many other things. But now, rather, we should redirect and make our target audience the Armenian communities, Armenians living in Armenia, because what we have right now is first of all result of massive misunderstanding of the situation. This is go into deep why this happened and what are the tools which currently supports this misunderstanding in the Armenian society. But not to change the question, we should work on the rising awareness of the Armenian society, both in diaspora and in the Armenia. First of all, and rising awareness means that people should know what are the real consequences of the Armenian-Turkish so-called reconciliation, of what is really happening in Artsakh, what could be personally, not only on the spiritual level, but personally, what are the consequences for each person living in Armenia and in diaspora out of this process. And by rising awareness, you have already people who are ready to act and who are ready to vote, who are ready to initiate by themselves some real civil society projects which could help to counter these threats. And as I promised, one example. When after the capitulation, there were huge talks and massive talks about handling to Azerbaijan several territories in Tavush and in Vayozor, other two regions of Armenia. And when there was a leakage of the document, which was prepared by two sides to sign, it was in mid-May, if I'm not mistaken. Not political parties, but civil society organizations, and I'm trying to be humble, but I should say also our team, our expert community, we raised, a huge noise on this, that what are the effects and consequences of signing this type of document and giving to Azerbaijan some more lands. And this brought to really massive outreach. We even organized, non-party affiliated protest meeting in couple of hours. And government felt that this is definitely going to, cost a lot for them. And they stopped this process, though saying that no, nothing is going to be signed, etc. But still, this public raising awareness campaign gave such a result. And I strongly believe that without this massive reaction, then today we would discuss also the results of the handling of Tavush enclaves or Vayazdur enclaves to Azerbaijan and the consequences of it. So the first step is rising awareness. The second is through this rising awareness, create real civil society organizations, not the ones being funded by different governments or foreign governments and putting non-Armenia affiliated priorities into Armenian agenda, but rather real national Armenian civic societies. And our organization, for example, the one Will mentioned in the beginning, Armenian Project, is the one who tries to do this by its own resources. But I think that this kind of civil society, real civil society organizations with the real Armenian agenda should be currently the main drivers of Armenian society and the Armenian state. As far as the Armenian state and state institutions are not acting in favor of Armenia. Moreover, and this is especially for diaspora, it should be really realized that diaspora is one of the frontiers of Armenian interests. And currently, both Turkey and Azerbaijan and other, let's say, enemies of Armenia, they are trying also to fully eliminate Armenian national organizations in diaspora communities as well, and make Armenian communities to be in a desperate situation and not to understand what to do. This is why it is really important now for the diaspora communities to self-organize as well. I mean, this is let's consider that this is the second phase after the genocide, when Armenian communities started to create different organizations which tried to answer to the challenges of the Armenians living abroad. Now it is the second phase, when you have a government which is also against Armenian diaspora. So you should create new formats of and new institutions inside diaspora to meet these new modern challenges. I know that this is very philosophical and probably you can see no practical recommendation, but this is not a work of one person, but rather of collective brainstorming and collective work to create new institutions and to work both with Armenia and your local governments. I know that definitely there should be a pressure on for example, on the U.S. government, for example, which is supporting the so-called democratic development of Armenia, to naming and pointing to the fact that currently many opposition members are being held in the jails, many opposition experts or independent experts are being prosecuted, and this is not about democracy. And I mean, for example, U.S. is supporting the democratic challenges. It should be taken into note, and this is a pressure which should be made by diaspora communities. And the last thing is that there should be definitely work in the informational sphere, and I really appreciate what 301 and Will are doing, because currently the informational field is also being occupied, and massively occupied, by foreign agendas, anti-Armenian agendas, and I mean, people are really being manipulated because they don't really know what is going on. If they open, state televisions, they see that everything is great and we have already reached to the level of the US. When they open internet, they see that Erdogan asked Pashinyan not to take the whole Western Armenia, but only part of it. If they look at the web social networks, they see that still people are discussing the Kocharian, Serge Sarkisyan or other issue, but not rather the things which are currently being happened. So this brought to massive misunderstanding of the situation, and work in the information field. This is why it is very, very, very much important. So I hope this is helpful for you.
Thank you, Varuzhan. We're going to take one more question from the audience and wrap it up. But I got a couple of messages on Twitter. One was from Viken, and I think it goes to an important point that you made about the diaspora, which is that the current negotiations that are going on are Armenia-Turkey negotiations, and they're not Armenian-Turkish negotiations. And I think that's an important distinction because the fact of the matter is that the Armenian nation itself is much larger than just the Armenian state. And that was something that the past two administrations recognized and they understood and incorporated into their policy and policy making. Unfortunately, that's not a position that is shared by the current government, and doubly unfortunate is the fact that they are doing these negotiations without any involvement whatsoever of anybody else, and not on behalf of anybody else either. So I think that was an important distinction. Just wanted to mention that. One other question, which I'm not sure you can answer, that's why I'm going to put it out there, and if you can answer it alongside whatever Vartan asks, who I'll invite to speak in a second, please go ahead and do so. If not, then that's okay. This one is from Sorov. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He was asking about the Iranian government and why you think, Varuzhan, the Iranian government hasn't had as much interest, it seems, as the Turkish government in sort of improving relations, or at the very least, if you can talk a little bit about what those interactions with the Iranian government and this current government have been. Meantime, let me invite Vartan to speak and to ask his question, then I'll move you back down to the audience. Vartan, give Varuzhan a chance to answer these questions, and then we will wrap it up, okay? So, can you hear me, Vartan?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, so yes, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for this very educational and informative session. I hope this would be one of many to come. I've been listening from the very beginning, and I'm in awe on how successful or and informative this whole session has been.
Thank you.
Moving forward, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the beginning, I heard that Mr. Geghamyan was kind of saying, let me just say that I, for one, I am against normalization of ties with Turkey with preconditions. But I kind of just hypothetically speaking, if there were no preconditions and say, for example, we would have open borders, I thought that it was of Mr. Geghamyan's point that it's not of any benefit to the state of Armenia for having open borders and access to Turkish economy and to Europe through Turkey, because Iran is another access route. But isn't Gyumri Kars railway, and I am not aware of the infrastructure and how if it's available immediately or if there has to be more investment into the infrastructure to actually utilize the Kars-Gyumri railway, and will that open up cargo from the Mediterranean and the Black Sea to Armenia, and will that ease the Lars problematic route into importing goods into Armenia? And I believe the other issue with Iran, access to Iran, is, and correct me again if I'm wrong, that we have to go through territory that we have lost now to complete the railway to Iran. So just the kind of the if he can, Mr. Geghamyan, if you could just educate or elaborate and clarify on if there were no preconditions, that is it still a bad idea to open up the borders with Turkey because of the influence that Turkey has in other, like you gave the example of the Balkan states, that they will impose their will, from economic means and so forth.
Thank you for that question, Vartan.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Vartan, for your very interesting and very important question. As I said, in general, this is a very huge topic, and we need much more to discuss in details. But I'm really happy that you are asking about details because they are really in my understanding, they're eye-opening in many ways, because as in any places in the Middle East, and in any issues connected with the Middle East, this is not, linear. This is very complex, and we should know the details to understand the whole processes and the whole logics behind any event. So I should start with the question of Vartan, and then we'll go to the question about Iran, and we'll connect these two. I should first start with my own question. If we take the presumption that Turkey's geopolitical interests in the region are against the Armenian strong state, and by saying strong state, it should have also strong local economy. If we take this presumption, then why we should think that in case of opening of the borders, Turkey should support the independent Armenian economy, but not to make every effort to retake that economy and to politically and economically influence Armenia. Why should Turkey think about a strong Armenia in the region if it can do everything to make it weak, and instead to support Azerbaijan in the South Caucasus? So this is kind of a question to challenge the view which we usually have, that Turkey should give an opportunity to Armenia to independently develop its own systems, its own railroads, its own roads, and many other communications, and many other things. So, but going into details, first of all, you mentioned about Gümrük-Kars railway. Please look at the rhetorics and the speeches and analysis published by the Turkish experts, Turkish government, and the Turkish ruling elite. No mention about Gümrük-Kars railroad, because it was there during the football diplomacy, only because the other two railroads were not built at that moment. The Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railroad, which connects Baku through railroad through Georgia to Ankara and to Istanbul, and the second one, which is currently being very rapidly constructed, Kars-Igdir-Nakhichevan railroad, which through Syunik now will connect to Azerbaijan. So no words about Gümrük-Kars, because Gümrük-Kars really could have, because no analysis could have some more benefits than the one right now being built by Armenia in the south of Syunik, which has no economic benefits for Armenia. But even this last chance is not currently being talked and discussed between Armenia and Turkey. No words about Gümrük-Kars. And I'm more than sure that Gümrük-Kars railroad is not going to be utilized because Turkey doesn't need that. It doesn't need really that. And it really understands that this could make Armenia a bit stronger. Then why it should give this opportunity instead of investing in Kars-Igdir-Nakhichevan and in Kars-Tbilisi-Baku railroads, which are currently, the one is operating and the second one is being rapidly built. And if everything goes this way, then in 2 years it will be built as well. So open borders are a good thing if Turkish state is too weak and has no possibility to have geopolitical influence on Armenia. But now it's not the case. And Turkey is not showing the weakness which could give a possibility to Armenia to start kind of an equal, economically, proven negotiations and ties with Turkey. So, I don't think that this question in general should be part of our discussion. About Armenia and Turkey relations. Because first of all, to summarize, there is no words of helping Armenia to strengthen its economy in Turkey. vice versa. Currently, the main aim, the main goal is to weaken Armenia and to make out of Armenia kind of a banana republic here, fully dependent on Azerbaijan and Turkey. And if you look at how these new connections, road connections should be, and this opening of the communications, how Azerbaijan and Turkey understands and see this, you see that they are going to not open communications for Armenia, but rather to make a transportation blockade for Armenia, the way that Armenia will never have an opportunity to use any road which is not under the influence of Azerbaijan or Turkey. You see, you have now Armenia's government posture that, with this new railroad through Nakhichevan and Syunik will connect to Iran. But this means that our main connection to Iran is now going to be through Azerbaijan with all its consequences. I don't think that we need to go into details what these consequences could be, but I mean, they are very obvious. If we are handling the so-called Tavush enclaves to Azerbaijan, recognizing their territorial integrity, then we are handling also the main road which connects us to Georgia. And it means that our main, currently, our main road to outside world, through which 70% of all our goods and transportations are being made, it also goes under the influence of Azerbaijan. Already one road is under the control of Azerbaijan in Syunik, the Kapan-Goris one, and the alternative road is only being constructed, and it's not that much convenient as the one in between Goris and Kapan. And we see that this is being currently controlled by Azerbaijan again. So all our roads are being finally could be controlled by Turkey and Azerbaijan, which brings you fully, into dependence towards to these two countries. And I should continue here to the question of Iranian interests here. Why it is important for Iran to keep, first of all, the territorial integrity of Armenia, and why it is also important for them to have connection through Armenia. First, Iran see South Caucasus as one of the battlefields between Turkey in the region. For Iranian side, South Caucasus also, it was always, and now as well, it was considered as one of the zones of its own influence. And it tries to implement this, of course, using the Iranian tactics, which is not that much clear when you look from side. But definitely their attempts are aimed at gradually rising their influence in the South Caucasus, especially after Russia's weakness after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And out of three South Caucasian republics, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Armenia, Iran sees Armenia as the natural ally, because Armenians are, they afraid of Turkish threat. They have the Turkish threat. Iran is trying to compete for the South Caucasus with Turkey, and Armenia becomes a natural ally. And through Armenia, it is possible to somehow avoid, again, Turkish territory to reach the Europe. Armenia, Georgia, Black Sea, and you are here, and to reach to Russia as well. Azerbaijan is not accepted as an ally because it's a Turkish, dominantly Turkish, pro-Turkish state, and it has many issues with Iran, having the so-called northern part of Iran being Turkish-speaking, being inhabited by Turkish-speaking people, having the not open but very direct messages from the Azerbaijani side that someday we are gonna conquer the northern part of Iran, which is the southern part of our homeland, and many other things. So Armenia is a natural ally for Iran, and a country which has positive image of Iranians, and vice versa, there is a positive image of Armenians in Iran. So these two makes a perfect ground for Iran to be to have the same interest as Armenia currently. And I can say for sure that Iran was one of the two major factors behind the process of stopping Azerbaijan and Turkey to take Syunik militarily in spring and in autumn last year. When you remember, Iran started military drills around Syunik, and several times mentioned that the territorial integrity of the Republic of Armenia is a red line for them. So that's why they are highly interested in keeping Armenia out of the influence zone of Turkey. Second, they are interested in building the so-called north-south corridor, which should connect through Armenian territory to Iran, to Georgia, and to Black Sea. And this corridor, this north-south transportation line, could be, useful for Armenia to reach Black Sea and to reach Gulf region. So, this is mutually beneficial thing, and that's why Iran also said they are ready to invest also into this road, which is absolutely, great thing for us, because it's, cost a lot for us. That's why any support from Iran could be, of really helpful. So this is really very important. And the last thing here is that from the Armenian perspective, Iran is an ally for us against Turkish occupation. And this is a kind of an asset for us. And we should work on this to make this asset, to develop this asset, and in order to make it bring us more benefits. And as far as this is the understanding in the Iranian side as well, this is a good thing for our new architecture of our security in the region. Because if you have Russia and Iran as your ally, and you work constantly to make them be your ally and develop this alliance, then, of course, your weight as a geopolitical actor in the region is of absolutely different than the one you have with the Turkish roles and Turkish economy in your country. We should have this layer as well, the geopolitical layer, where Iran currently works as our ally. And we should really appreciate this and work constantly in this direction. I hope I, at least to some level, answered to both of the questions of Sora and Vartan.
Thank you very much, Varuzhan. That was, again, very insightful and definitely comprehensive. Unfortunately, we have no more time for any further questions, but what I am going to say is you should all absolutely follow Varuzhan on Twitter. You can follow him at his handle, which is gvaruzhan, GVARUZHAN. That's on Twitter. He's also on Facebook. You can look him up there. If you want to find his handle, you can just go over to the 301 page. And I would also recommend that you follow his project, the Armenian project, which I mentioned at the beginning, and he also mentioned during his talk about civil society. That was one thing that I did want to make a note on. One of the important things to understand is that the civil society organizations can play a positive role in Armenia. Some of you probably have read some of the things that I've written, and I've been generally very critical of those. But my criticism has to do with the foreign-funded civil society organizations, which act essentially as agents of foreign countries in Armenia. Whereas what Varuzhan is doing with the Armenian project, and what some other people are doing through similar organizations, is based in Armenia. It's supported by Armenians, and it's done in the interest of the Armenian nation, right? These aren't external sort of forces that are trying to push whatever agendas they're doing or they're interested in Armenia. So that's something that I wanted to note. I think it was an important distinction to make. Yeah.
Well,
Sorry,
if I may,
of course.
I mean, I will thank you for this. I mean, very, very well introduction of what we do. Really, I mean, this is what we really do. What the possibility to monitor Turkish news, to possibility to, I mean, give this kind of, I mean, lectures or talks or many other things is fully being supported by Armenians in general. I mean, because recently we were in the U.S. I mean, lecturing in different Armenian communities. And I mean, we met wonderful people who understand the issues and tries to, with their own, I mean, efforts, with their own resources, tries to support what we can do here. Because I mean, really, the main problem is here. The main problem is in Armenia, and now all our efforts should be targeting the problem here to first of all to solve it. So I mean, everybody can somehow help. Everybody can somehow initiate their own thing, and it is the very critical situation where every effort is, I mean, worth million. So I hope that this talk somehow motivated you to to be active and to start something by your own or support those who do already, and to keep track on these issues, because they are really nationwide. This is not about Armenia, but general about our nation and what is the future of our nation. And I really appreciate what you do, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you again, Varuzhan. Again, please, everybody who has been listening, keep in touch with Varuzhan. Follow him on his different platforms. Support in any way that you can. This was a production of 301 AD. I would encourage all of you, if you don't already, to follow 301. Again, support 301 in any way that you can. This talk was, I think, the first of many that will eventually be scheduled. This one was recorded and it will be produced and released. So if anybody missed it, you can send it to them later on. But I want to thank everybody for joining the call. I want to thank everybody for their patience and for being a part of the discussion. And most of all, I want to once again thank Varuzhan Geghamyan for his participation, for his insights, for his wisdom, and for enlightening us on this very important and ultimately monumental process that is going on right now in the history of the Armenian nation. Thank you again, Varuzhan.
Thank you.